I remember after the Zab judo, I remember running to mum and trying to find mum. Yeah, it was just a good moment in our lives. I do remember the good memories, and we're only here to bring good memories. I didn't lose a round, and I got him out by 8. So
I just want to let everyone know that my name's Tim, not the son.
It's the second knockdown. You see the defences have come down. He's on unsteady legs. Hamed just picks him apart from long range.
For me, everybody's always going to say, yeah, but is your son as good as you? Who's going to be as good as me?
Family dynasties in sport are fascinating. An entire bloodline stamping their authority on an athletic endeavour, producing a conveyor belt of elite practitioners is bizarre yet impressive. But surely pressure builds upon individuals down the line. Expectations rise, failure to surpass a father's legacy is frowned upon, and criticism readily flows. You may be handed the genetic attributes to succeed, but mental fortitude is built, not inherited. And sadly for Tszyu, having your champion winning father ringside can perhaps have a catastrophic impact on your career. As Roberto Duran stated, boxers go to dark places that no one else inhabits. Boxing is perhaps the loneliest and most mentally testing of all sports, often meaning only impoverished, desperate fighters make it to the top. But if they are successful, thus securing their family's financial future, establishing a dynasty becomes more difficult as the offspring's hunger goes.
Well, you've got 2 sons, one who's what, 20?
Yes,
right?
he's 20.
And the other one is 13, who's come with you this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to go into boxing?
I don't think so, no, because as I've said previous, middle class and better class families, you don't get boxers, that they don't produce boxers. So the boys have had it a bit too easy, to be honest.
I always look at my kids and I think, wow, these guys are pretty much middle class kids. They live their life, they do what they want, they go to college and everything. I would never want to put that pressure on my son that you have to be the total best, you have to dominate everybody, you're going to be the best that ever live at this. You put that kind of pressure on them, that's incredible. I would never do that to them.
Yet, at the beginning of March 2024, it seemed that Hall of Famer Kostya Tszyu and his son Tim were on a path to buck the trend. Tim was 24-0, boasting an impressive 17 knockouts, and was considered one of Australia's star boxers. He had proved himself with notable wins over Jeff Horn, Carlos Ocampo and Takeshi Inoue, enabling him to fully emerge from his father's shadow and establish himself. This was incredibly impressive when considering Tim grew up with the riches of his father's boxing career. Kostya's fighting sons, Tim and Nikita, attended one of Sydney's most expensive private schools, Newington College, and grew up in a mansion with their father's Bentley in the garage. Yet, in Grantley Chiesa's book Knockout, Tim clarifies, "My dad never gave me anything for free. He was so focused, like an army sergeant. Life with my father wasn't easy, it was actually quite hard. He made me work, he made me hungry for success." Now, boxing folklore has underlined the pressure heaped upon sons when trained by their former boxer father.
Well, it's just that you're learning how to box from your father. I really envy that. What's it like?
And I still believe my dad's boxing style was right. If I could only somehow compensate for my lack of strength, I'll overcome the wall that my father couldn't get past, not just for his sake, but for my own sake. So if you're going to rely upon power, I'll face you head on. I'll be ready to knock you down in the first round.
Fortunately for Tim, from a young age, he was trained by his uncle, Igor Golubev. If a fighter attempts to emulate their father's style, it can be disastrous, especially if they fail to perform it to a required standard. Tim evidently took inspiration from those outside his family circle, with Chiesa noting that the Aussie studied Roy Jones Jr., Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Floyd Mayweather and Triple G. Finding his own technique was probably paramount, as there were murmurings that Tim, though talented, lacked the natural athleticism, power and speed of his father.
He's not as naturally gifted, but when you say naturally gifted, what, like, you often think of speed, power, agility, athleticism, these things, but what Tim has got naturally gifts is his concentration and his patience and his systematic approach to fighting, right? And his dad who had the athleticism, timing, power, speed.
With Tim's natural affinity for concentration and a systematic approach to fighting, boxing under the right conditions and blocking out external pressure was paramount for him.
I think it was more the expectation that people had.
Yep.
That I was supposed to be this monster as soon as I turned professional. But everything takes time to build.
On his professional debut against Zoran Kasady in December 2016, he won by unanimous decision, yet, as ESPN highlighted, Kostya's overbearing presence caused chaos. Whether you interpret it as a nice moment with his son or a distraction from Tim's pivotal moments, Kostya was certainly present, filming a video with his son and reveling in the victory. But Kostya had returned to Russia in September 2012, leaving 18-year-old Tim and his family in Australia. He would remarry before having 2 children. Consequently, despite watching his son's boxing debut in 2016, Kostya would be absent from any of Tim's Australian-based contests over the next 7 years.
Your dad was there at that fight?
Yeah.
What's it like?
It was uncomfortable because he was screaming too much.
Was he?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he hasn't traditionally been at a lot of your fights after that?
He's never been since.
So it's only that one fight. And is that because you said, mate, it's too full on here?
No,
or just because where he's living?
He's got his own life now.
Yet the problem is, in my view at least, Tim retained a poor memory of his father's influence ringside. And for a fighter who needed to be locked in, prioritising concentration, the return of such influence could be costly. Boxers are creatures of habit, mostly clinging to strict routines and pre-fight rituals, so any disturbance of this can hurt. By early 2022, Tim had fully established himself as an Australian boxing hero, with all his bouts taking place down under. Due partly to a combination of his family name, exciting fighting style and likeable demeanour, he was able to sell out stadiums and arenas in the country.
Javante sells here, Canelo sells here, and in Mexico you sell in Australia. Is there truth to that a little bit too? Or?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
Due to his ambitious nature and likely wanting to emulate his father's success in the States, notably against Shambo Mitchell, Julio Cesar Chavez and Zab Judah, he would be led to one conclusion. As previously mentioned, sons are often under immense pressure to match, if not surpass, their father's legacies, and Tim would always have his sights set on the US.
But for me, as a young kid and as a boxing lover, America's where it's at. And I grew up watching big fights, and for me, it was always a dream of mine to be fighting here, to be fighting out of here.
Leaving the comfort of Australia would prove testing. In his first Minneapolis matchup against Terrell Gausha, he'd be ominously dropped in the first round. Testament to his warrior spirit, he would proceed to dominate the bout, winning by unanimous decision, but perhaps a frailty had been exposed. Tszyu would return to Australia before churning out solid wins against Tony Harrison, Carlos Ocampo and Brian Mendoza, yet he knew the importance of returning to America to fully challenge himself. In his book, Kostya, My Story, Kostya described the win over Zab Judah as his finest moment in boxing, before asserting that my kids and grandkids would remember that day. With Tim very much present in the ring, this statement likely holds true and probably explains why he's been so set on emulating the success of his father in the States. In March 2024, he fought Sebastian Fundora in Las Vegas for the vacant WBC World Super Welter title, cruelly losing by split decision as blood poured over his face after suffering a cut from an elbow. Luck simply wasn't on the Australian side. Could it have been called as a no contest? Regardless, he had failed to join Leon and Corey Spinks as only the second father and son duo to become unified world boxing champions. Yet there was still chance for salvation. Electing to fight the Russian Bakram Martazaliev, the overwhelming majority deemed it as the start of a rebuild, therefore favouring the Australian. After all, though Bakram boasted a 22-0 record, he had faced little talent of note, beside Germany's Jack Kulke. But here's where issues arose.
Yeah, well, he's a step-aside fighter, clearly. I think he's really been overthinking this because, in all honesty, I haven't really thought much about the fight. When it comes to fight night, I know when to put it on. Again, I don't think he's the smartest chap on the block, so...
Despite coming off the back of a defeat, the dubious and unfortunate nature surrounding the loss ensured the chip remained on Tim's shoulder. He displayed arrogance and shot down any talk of Bakram posing a problem. Stupidly, he mocked and insulted the Russian, questioning his intelligence and labelling him as a step-aside fighter, which only served to pile further pressure upon his shoulders. Perhaps less noticeable, but Tszyu would make a judgment on Bakram's routine.
It's bizarre to me. I come from a boxing background and a true professional life. We don't do this type of stuff.
The sound bites he was providing made him seem slightly pretentious, but more worryingly, it was as though he felt he had a divine right to be in that ring, descending from a legacy of fighters. A dangerous outlook indeed. The noble art can humble you when you cut corners and believe you are in the ring by divine right. Additionally, for the first time since his debut, his father Kostya would be in attendance. Now, remember how we highlighted Tim's concentration as a key weapon in his arsenal? Well, this now seemed to be effectively gone. In the fight, Tszyu would be dropped 3 times in the second round and once in round 3. He committed fundamental mistakes, like dropping his right when throwing his left, but he also lacked concentration, fighting on instinct without showing much strategy or ring IQ. He evidently didn't study his opponent enough, but his poor focus would be explained in the following days. Whether excuses or not, Tim would ban his father from attending any future fights, labelling it as an unfamiliar and an alien-like experience. The mixture of divine right and the watchful eyes of his famous father had contributed to an overestimation of his ability and an underestimation of his opponents. Tim simply didn't look himself in there and very much paid the price. But here's where family legacy builds added pressure. Tszyu now had to rebuild his career, and his next bout was effectively make or break, taking on the American Joey Spencer. Yet, the intensity was further ramped up by the fact that the Tszyu had never lost on Australian soil, with brother Nikita Tszyu beating Masudiev in August 2024 to make his record 10-0, his father having won all 18 of his Australia-based contests, and Tim boasting 22 victories down under. The track record is unmatched. When considering this, you get the impression that Tim is burdened with his father's heritage to a degree, through constant comparisons and reminders of past records. With Kostya banned from attending, Tim would emerge victorious, stopping Spencer in the 4th round. Showing solid accuracy and timing, Tim did seem improved, but his opponent made it easy for him, standing directly in front of Tszyu while showing little output. But many still identified the same old issues with Tim, largely through a lack of head movement and not utilising different angles. I personally felt he did a professional job and was more defensively responsible, but I'm unsure whether he's ready for someone like Keith Thurman in all honesty. But now I want to hear what you guys think. Can Tim re-establish himself in the welterweight division? Do you think his dad's name and legacy weighs upon him? Or does he relish the challenge, and is Kostya a good influence? Let me know down below. Now, please consider liking and subscribing, it really does mean the most. More videos are on their way, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.